broadcast the distress call that shook the stars and announced humanity's arrival. The galactic communication array hummed with its usual background chatter of trade negotiations, diplomatic exchanges, and the endless bureaucratic droning of the Confederation Council. For 3,000 years, the same civilized voices had filled the void between stars, speaking in measured tones about proper procedures and established protocols. Then everything changed. Ambassador Zelthara of the Vrex Collective was reviewing mineral rights disputes when her translator began screaming. Not the polite chime that indicated an incoming message, but an actual electronic shriek that made her 4 eyes water and her scales ripple in distress. Across the communication hub, dozens of other species were having the same experience as their translation matrices struggled to process something completely foreign. The message that cut through every frequency, every secure channel, every private communication line in the galaxy was unlike anything the Confederation had ever heard. It was raw, desperate, and carried an emotional weight that made even the most logical species pause their daily routines. Mayday, mayday, mayday. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth vessel Persistence. We are under attack by unknown hostiles. Repeat, we are under attack. Our engines are failing, life support is compromised, and we have wounded aboard. Any ships in the vicinity? Please respond. We are broadcasting on all frequencies. Please, if anyone can hear this, we need immediate assistance. The transmission continued for 17 minutes, growing more desperate as weapons fire could be heard in the background. The voice belonged to someone who clearly had never heard of the Confederation, had no knowledge of proper communication protocols, and was fighting for her life against something that had already destroyed most of her ship. But it was what happened next that truly shook the established order. A second human voice joined the transmission, calmer but filled with cold determination. This is Lieutenant Commander Marcus Torres. Captain Chen is wounded and I'm taking command. To whatever species is attacking us, know this. We are humans from the planet Earth. We came here in peace, seeking knowledge and friendship among the stars. You have chosen to answer our greeting with violence. That was a mistake. The weapons fire in the background suddenly intensified, but now it was going in the other direction. Whatever had been attacking the human ship was now under assault from weapons that made sounds unlike anything in the Confederation's database. There were no refined energy discharges or calculated plasma bursts. Instead, there were explosive roars, rapid-fire chattering, and the distinct whistle of projectiles moving at incredible speeds. For every member of our crew you've hurt, Torres continued, his voice never losing its deadly calm. For every system you've damaged, for every drop of human blood you've spilled, you will pay tenfold. We don't know who you are or why you attacked peaceful explorers, but you're about to learn why Earth survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, and 10,000 years of warfare. The galactic communication array fell silent as every civilization simultaneously tried to process what they were hearing. The Vrex, known for their logical approach to all situations, began running probability calculations. The Keth, masters of warfare for 2 millennia, started analyzing the acoustic signatures of the unknown weapons. The Zephyrians, whose entire culture was built around peaceful meditation, found themselves genuinely frightened for the first time in centuries. Ambassador Zelthara was the first to recover her composure. Computer, triangulate the source of that transmission. Unable to comply, her ship's AI responded. The signal is coming from the Forbidden Zone. The Forbidden Zone. Every species in the galaxy knew to avoid that region of space. It was where the Devourers lived, a race so violent and predatory that the Confederation had spent enormous resources containing them rather than attempting any form of diplomacy. Nothing that entered the Forbidden Zone ever came back out. Nothing except distress calls that cut off abruptly, leaving only silence. But these humans, whoever they were, seemed to be fighting back. Dr. Kess of the Altarian Republic was monitoring deep space phenomena when her instruments detected something impossible. Energy signatures from the Forbidden Zone showed massive explosions, but they weren't the typical disintegration patterns of Devourer weapons. These were something else entirely, something that seemed to be overwhelming the Predator's usual tactics. "Impossible," she whispered to herself, adjusting her sensors for maximum sensitivity. The Devourers had destroyed fleets of Confederation ships. They had rendered entire star systems uninhabitable. Yet something was fighting them to a standstill in their own territory. The human transmission continued intermittently over the next few hours, painting a picture that defied everything the galaxy thought it knew about warfare. These newcomers weren't using energy shields or quantum defensive matrices. Instead, they spoke of armor plating and redundant systems and damage control teams, working to keep their ship operational through what sounded like catastrophic damage. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to be winning. "This is Torres again," came another update. "We've disabled 3 of their ships and are pursuing the rest. Our ship took heavy damage, but Earth builds things to last. We're going to make sure these predators think twice before attacking peaceful vessels again." The Confederation Council convened an emergency session. Representatives from 47 different species gathered virtually, their holographic forms flickering with nervous energy as they tried to understand what was happening in their carefully ordered galaxy. Chancellor Vorth of the Confederation spoke first, his crystalline form shimmering with uncertainty. "We have a situation unlike anything in recorded history. An unknown species has entered the Forbidden Zone and appears to be engaging the Devourers in active combat." "Not just engaging," interrupted General Crix of the Warrior Caste. "From what we can determine, they're winning. My analysts have reviewed the acoustic data from their weapons. They're using kinetic projectiles, explosive warheads, and what appears to be chemical propulsion. It's primitive technology, but devastatingly effective." The room fell silent. Primitive technology overwhelming the Devourers was like using stone tools to defeat plasma cannons. Ambassador Yith of the Peaceful Collective raised a tentacle nervously. "What do we know about these humans? Where did they come from? How did they get past our border monitors?" "We know nothing," admitted Chancellor Vorth. "Their planet Earth doesn't appear in any of our star charts. Their ship design is unlike anything in our databases. They seem to have developed independently of all known galactic civilizations." As if summoned by their conversation, another transmission cut across all frequencies. This time it was different. The desperation was gone, replaced by something that made every species in the galaxy feel a chill of recognition. "This is Captain Chen of the Earth vessel Persistence. I'm recovering from my injuries, and I want to thank my crew for their outstanding performance under impossible circumstances. We came to this region of space following a distress signal that turned out to be a trap. The species that attacked us appears to specialize in luring vessels into ambushes." Her voice hardened perceptibly. "They made a critical error in judgment. They assumed we would be easy prey because we're new to space travel. They discovered that humans have been dealing with predators for our entire evolutionary history. We don't surrender, we don't run, and we don't forget." The transmission paused, and background voices could be heard discussing salvage operations and prisoner interrogation. "We've captured several of their personnel," Chen continued. "We're attempting to establish communication, but they seem shocked that anyone fought back. Our science team is analyzing their technology, and our engineers are already designing countermeasures for their weapon systems." The final part of the transmission sent ripples of unease throughout the galaxy. "We've decided to continue our mission of peaceful exploration, but we're keeping weapons hot and shields up. To any species monitoring this frequency, we come in peace, but we're prepared for war. We hope to meet you as friends, but if you choose to greet us as enemies, you'll discover that Earth didn't climb to the top of its food chain by being gentle." The distress call that shook the stars and announced humanity's arrival. The human ship appeared at the edge of Confederation space 3 days after their last transmission from the Forbidden Zone. Every sensor array within 50 light-years had been focused on that region, waiting to see if the impossible reports were true. When the Persistence finally emerged from the zone that had swallowed countless vessels over the centuries, it carried with it proof that everything the galaxy thought it knew about warfare was wrong. The ship was a monster. Not in the elegant flowing lines that characterized most galactic vessels, but in its brutal functional design that screamed of a species that had learned to survive in a hostile universe. Scorch marks covered its hull, and entire sections showed signs of hasty repairs, yet it moved with the confidence of a vessel that had been tested in the worst possible circumstances and emerged victorious. Admiral Korath of the Confederation Defense Fleet was the first to make visual contact. His flagship, the Eternal Vigilance, was considered one of the most advanced vessels in the galaxy, equipped with weapons that could crack moons and shields that could withstand solar flares. As he studied the human ship through his viewscreen, he felt something he hadn't experienced in his 4 centuries of military service: uncertainty. "Analysis," he ordered his tactical officer. "Sir, the vessel appears to be heavily damaged, but fully operational. I'm detecting weapon signatures unlike anything in our database. They have kinetic projectile systems, missile launchers, and what appears to be chemical explosive devices. Their armor is primitive metal alloys, but it's incredibly thick. No energy shields detected." Korath studied the readouts with growing bewilderment. "No shields? How did they survive combat with the Devourers?" "Unknown, sir, but sensors indicate debris fields throughout the Forbidden Zone consistent with destroyed Devourer vessels. At least 15 confirmed kills. 15 Devourer ships destroyed. The Confederation's best fleets had never managed to destroy more than 3 before being forced to retreat. These humans had waltzed into the most dangerous region of space and emerged victorious using what amounted to ancient technology. The communication request came exactly when Admiral Korath expected it. The humans were nothing if not direct. "Confederation vessel. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earthship Persistence. We come in peace and request permission to enter your space for diplomatic contact. We have information about the hostile species in the region you appear to be avoiding that we believe you'll find valuable." Korath activated the communication array, his training taking over despite his confusion. "Human vessel. This is Admiral Korath of the Confederation Defense Fleet. You are requested to maintain your current position while we arrange for proper diplomatic protocols." "Understood, Admiral. But before we begin formal negotiations, I want you to know that we've been monitoring your communications for the past 72 hours. We're aware that our arrival has caused considerable concern among your member species. The casual admission that they had been eavesdropping on Confederation communications sent a chill through Korath's bridge crew. Their encryption was supposed to be unbreakable. "We didn't mean to cause alarm," Chen continued. "We're explorers, not conquerors. But we've learned that the galaxy can be a dangerous place, and we prefer to be informed about potential threats." Over the next several hours, as the Confederation scrambled to arrange an unprecedented first contact scenario, the humans demonstrated a patience that seemed at odds with their aggressive reputation. They maintained their position exactly, responded to all queries promptly, and even offered medical assistance when a Confederation patrol ship experienced a life support failure nearby. But it was the small details that truly unsettled the established powers. The human ship's communication array was constantly scanning, analyzing, and cataloging everything within range. Their passive sensors were so sensitive that they were detecting stealth ships the Confederation hadn't even known were in the area. When politely asked about this capability, Captain Chen explained with disturbing casualness that paranoia was a survival trait on Earth. The first formal meeting took place aboard the neutral station Harmony, a diplomatic outpost specifically designed for interspecies negotiations. Ambassador Zelthara had been chosen to represent the Confederation, partly for her experience with first contact situations and partly because her species was considered among the most non-threatening in the galaxy. She was not prepared for humans. Captain Chen entered the meeting chamber accompanied by two others she introduced as her diplomatic and military advisors. They moved with a fluid grace that suggested either extensive training or ingrained combat reflexes. Their eyes constantly scanned the room, noting exits, potential weapons, and defensive positions. When they sat, they chose seats that gave them clear lines of sight to all entrances. "Ambassador Zelthara," Chen said with a smile that somehow managed to be both warm and predatory. "It's an honor to meet a representative of galactic civilization. We've dreamed of this moment for generations." Zelthara's scales rippled nervously as she activated her translation matrix. "The honor is ours, Captain Chen. We must admit, your arrival has been unexpected." "I imagine so. We understand we've caused quite a stir by engaging the species you call the Devourers. We had no choice. They attacked us without provocation." "And yet you defeated them," Zelthara said carefully. "No one has ever successfully fought the Devourers in their own territory." Chen's expression darkened slightly. "They're bullies. We don't like bullies. On Earth, bullies learn that there are consequences for picking on peaceful people." The diplomatic advisor, who had introduced himself as Dr. James Harrison, leaned forward. "We've been studying your historical records since establishing communication. It appears these Devourers have been a threat to galactic civilization for centuries. We're curious why more aggressive action hasn't been taken against them." The question caught Zelthara off guard. "Aggressive action? Ambassador Harrison, the Confederation is built on principles of peaceful coexistence and diplomatic resolution. Violence is always a last resort." "Even against a species that has never shown any interest in peace?" asked the military advisor, Colonel Maria Santos. "From what we can determine, they've destroyed hundreds of ships and killed millions of sentients over the centuries. At what point does peaceful coexistence become enabling genocide?" The bluntness of the question sent ripples of discomfort through the diplomatic chamber. These were not the kinds of conversations that typically occurred in Confederation meetings. "We have contained them," Zelthara protested. "The Forbidden Zone keeps them isolated from peaceful species." "Contained?" Chen's eyebrows rose. "Ambassador, with respect, you've abandoned an entire region of space to predators. That's not containment, that's surrender." Over the next several hours, the humans presented their analysis of the Devourer threat, complete with tactical assessments, captured technology, and interrogation reports from prisoners. Their approach to the problem was systematic, thorough, and utterly alien to Confederation thinking. Where the galaxy's civilization saw an unfortunate but manageable threat to be avoided, humans saw a problem to be solved. Where others saw the necessity of acceptance, humans saw the possibility of victory. Most disturbing of all, they had the capability to back up their confidence. "We're not suggesting that the Confederation abandon its principles," Dr. Harrison explained patiently. "But there's a difference between peaceful coexistence and passive acceptance of evil. Some threats can't be negotiated with or reasoned with. They can only be defeated." "And you believe you can defeat the Devourers?" Zelthara asked. "We already have," Colonel Santos replied matter-of-factly. "We destroyed their primary base of operations, captured their command structure, and scattered their fleets. It'll take them decades to recover, and when they do, we'll be waiting." The casual confidence with which she made these statements was perhaps more unsettling than any threat could have been. These humans had accomplished in days what the galaxy's greatest military minds had considered impossible. "What do you want from us?" Zelthara finally asked. Chen smiled again, and this time the warmth reached her eyes. "Friendship, trade, cultural exchange, all the things we hoped to find when we first reached for the stars. But we want them on terms of mutual respect and equality. We're not asking to be protected, and we're not asking for permission to protect ourselves. And if threats arise, then we'll deal with them the same way we dealt with the Devourers, the same way we've dealt with every threat humanity has ever faced. We'll adapt, we'll overcome, and we'll... The distress call that shook the stars and announced humanity's arrival. 6 months after first contact, the galaxy had divided itself into 3 distinct camps regarding the human question. The first camp, led by species like the Vrex and Altarians, viewed humanity as a necessary addition to galactic civilization. They pointed to the dramatic decrease in piracy and aggressive actions by hostile species as evidence that sometimes strength was the best guarantee of peace. The second camp, composed primarily of the more peaceful species like the Zephyrians and the Harmonic Collective, remained deeply uncomfortable with human methods despite appreciating their results. They worried that embracing violence, even against clearly hostile forces, would corrupt the moral foundations of galactic society. The third camp was the smallest but perhaps most significant. It consisted of species that had spent centuries being victimized by various threats and were now, for the first time in generations, experiencing something resembling hope. Ambassador Yeath of the Peaceful Collective found herself in the unexpected position of defending human actions to her own people. The irony was not lost on her. As a representative of a species that had elevated nonviolence to a religious principle, she should have been horrified by humanity's approach to problem solving. Instead, she found their directness refreshingly honest. "They don't pretend that evil doesn't exist," she explained to the collective's High Council. "They acknowledge it, confront it, and eliminate it. There's a purity to their approach that our endless deliberations lack." High Contemplator Zeth's response carried the weight of centuries of philosophical tradition. "Violence begets violence, Ambassador. By embracing destruction as a solution, they will inevitably become that which they claim to oppose." With respect, High Contemplator, that argument would carry more weight if we hadn't spent the last 300 years watching pirates destroy our trade vessels while we debated the ethics of self-defense. Sometimes philosophical purity is a luxury that costs innocent lives. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from the border regions. Another human ship had arrived, this one much larger than the Persistence and accompanied by 2 escort vessels. But what truly caught attention was their mission. They were hunting. Captain Chen's voice cut across the communication channels with the same calm authority that had first announced humanity's presence. "This is Captain Chen of the Earth vessel Persistence. We're working with the Earth ship's Retribution and Vindication to track down escaped Devourer forces. We have intelligence indicating they're planning attacks on civilian shipping in this sector." The response from Admiral Korath was immediate. "Captain Chen, this is Admiral Korath. Our sensors show no Devourer activity in this region." "Admiral, with respect, your sensors aren't designed to detect Devourer stealth technology. Ours are. We've been hunting these particular raiders for 2 weeks. They're here, and they're planning something." What followed was a masterclass in practical warfare doctrine. The humans didn't wait for Confederation approval or debate the ethics of preemptive action. They systematically swept the sector, using sensor techniques that made Devourer stealth technology irrelevant. When they found their targets hiding in asteroid fields, they didn't issue warnings or attempt negotiations. They simply eliminated the threat. Dr. Kess monitored the engagement from her research station, her instruments recording every detail of the brief but decisive battle. The Devourers had indeed been planning an ambush on a refugee convoy that would pass through the sector in 2 days. The humans had prevented a massacre that the Confederation never would have seen coming. "Computer, analyze human tactical doctrine," she commanded. "Analysis complete. Human military strategy appears to be based on the principle of overwhelming force applied with precision timing. They prefer to end conflicts quickly rather than allowing them to escalate. Their weapons systems are designed for maximum effectiveness rather than minimum casualties. And their success rate? 100%. No human military action has resulted in failure since their arrival in galactic space. The statistic was troubling for reasons Dr. Kess couldn't quite articulate. It wasn't that she disapproved of their success, but the implications of their perfect record were staggering. Either humans were incredibly lucky, or they were operating on a level of military sophistication that made the rest of the galaxy look like children playing with toys. The truth became apparent when Ambassador Zelthara was invited aboard the human ship Retribution for a tour of their facilities. What she saw there challenged every assumption about technological development and military philosophy that she had held. The ship's armory contained weapons that ranged from simple chemical projectile systems to devices that she couldn't even identify. When she asked Captain Torres about the variety, his explanation was characteristically human in its brutal simplicity. "Different problems require different solutions," he said, running his hand along a device that looked disturbingly organic. "This one releases engineered viruses that target specific genetic markers. We developed it for a species that thought biological warfare was a good idea. They learned otherwise." "You've fought biological warfare campaigns?" Zelthara asked, her scales rippling with distress. "We've fought every kind of warfare you can imagine, and several kinds you probably can't. Humans have been at war with something for our entire existence. Other humans, mostly, but also diseases, natural disasters, hostile wildlife, and environmental collapse. We're very good at war because we've had a lot of practice." The casual way he discussed genocide-level weapons as simply another tool in the toolkit was perhaps more unsettling than any threat could have been. These weren't monsters reveling in destruction. They were pragmatists who had learned to use whatever methods were necessary to protect their people. "But surely you prefer peace," Zelthara pressed. Torres smiled, and for a moment, she saw genuine warmth in his expression. "Of course we do. Peace is wonderful. But peace isn't the absence of conflict, Ambassador. Peace is what you have when all the people who would threaten it are either convinced not to or unable to. We prefer convincing them, but we're prepared for the alternative." The tour continued through medical facilities that could regrow limbs, engineering sections that could rebuild entire ship systems during combat, and training areas where humans practiced techniques for fighting in zero gravity, underwater, in poisonous atmospheres, and in conditions that would kill most species instantly. "How do you prepare for so many different threats?" Zelthara asked. "We don't prepare for specific threats," Torres explained. "We prepare for the unexpected. Earth taught us that the universe is actively trying to kill you, and if you want to survive, you need to be ready for anything." The final stop on the tour was the ship's memorial wall, where the names of humans who had died in the service of their species were etched in metal that would last for millennia. There were thousands of names representing conflicts that spanned Earth's history and beyond. "Every name on this wall represents someone who died so that others could live," Torres said quietly. "That's what we're really fighting for, not territory or resources or ideology. We fight so that people can live their lives without fear." As Zelthara returned to her own ship, she found herself grappling with a fundamental shift in her worldview. The humans weren't conquerors or destroyers. They were guardians, shaped by a hostile universe into something capable of protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. The realization came to her as she reviewed the casualty reports from the past 6 months. Piracy had dropped by 90%. Aggressive actions by hostile species had virtually disappeared. Trade routes that had been dangerous for centuries were now safe for civilian traffic. The humans weren't changing the galaxy through conquest or diplomacy. They were changing it by making it clear that predatory behavior would no longer be tolerated. Species that had spent centuries victimizing others were discovering that there were consequences for their actions. 3 days later, Ambassador Zelthara stood before the full Confederation Council and delivered a report that would reshape galactic politics for generations to come. "The humans represent something we have never seen before," she began. "They are a species that has achieved true civilization not despite their capacity for violence, but because of their willingness to use it in defense of the innocent. They don't seek to rule us or change us. They simply refuse to allow others to harm us." Chancellor Vorth's crystalline form flickered with uncertainty. "And what do you recommend, Ambassador?" "I recommend we stop debating the ethics of their methods and start learning from their example. For 3,000 years, we've maintained peace by avoiding conflict. The humans have shown us how to maintain peace by ending it." The vote that followed was not unanimous, but it was decisive. The Confederation would enter into a formal alliance with humanity, not as subjects or protectors, but as equals in the task of building a galaxy where peaceful species could thrive without fear. The humans had arrived with a distress call that shook the stars. They were staying as guardians who would ensure that such calls would be answered swiftly and decisively. The galaxy was learning that sometimes the best defense of peace was the willingness to fight for it. And humanity had just taught the universe that Earth's children were very, very good at fighting. Make sure it never threatens peaceful people again. As the meeting concluded and the humans returned to their ship, Ambassador Zelthara found herself facing a troubling realization. For 3,000 years, the Confederation had built its civilization on the assumption that peace was possible with any rational species. The humans were forcing them to confront the possibility that some threats required a different kind of response. The galaxy was about to change, and no one was quite sure what that change would bring. The transmission ended, leaving the galactic communication array buzzing with panicked discussions in 47 different languages. For the first time in 3,000 years, the established order was facing something completely unpredictable. The humans were coming.